You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll mark Press Freedom Day by seeing what's making the headlines with Executive Director of the Rory Peck Trust, John Williams, and journalist and President of Murray Edwards College at Cambridge University, Dorothy Byrne. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Observer is discussing the impact of women on Reform's successes in the recent local elections. The Mail leads with an exclusive on the latest claims by Prince Harry, who said in an interview that his father, the King, won't speak to him and that he's been the victim of an establishment stitch-up. That story also on the front of The People. They say Harry's bombshell interview will cause more issues with his father, the King. On the front of The Telegraph, claims by Donald Trump's tariff czar that Britain is at risk of becoming a compliant servant of communist China. The Sunday Times leads with the local elections, saying Reform UK wants to re-moralise and re-educate young people, as well as declare a national emergency on illegal immigration. On the front of The Express, claims that farmers are facing a mental health crisis amid planned inheritance tax reforms. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has given everyone the call-up to join VE Day celebrations across the nation tomorrow and honour the lion-hearted generation that defeated Nazi evil. That's on the front of The Mirror. And TV's Paul O'Grady's Messages from the Grave. Hundreds of recordings from the beloved presenter have been turned into a new official biography. That's on the front of The Star. And tonight we're joined by Executive Director of the Rory Peck Trust, John Williams, and journalist and President of Murray Edwards College at Cambridge University, Dorothy Byrne. Welcome to both of you. Thanks. Let's start with the Sunday Times and the story that hit yesterday and somewhat scuppered the local elections and is taking the lead. And this is this interview that Prince Harry has given, in which he made several revelations. First and foremost, that his father isn't speaking to him. John?
Well, I suspect the front pages are going to do little to reassure Harry that there isn't a conspiracy. They all seem to take one view, which is that Harry's rather overstepped the mark. There's a great quote which is sourced to a friend of the King, in which this source says that Harry is like a gambler in a casino. He can't walk away. He just doubles down. Even when he speaks of reconciliation, it's laced with threats and anger. Well, given that Harry's whole position in court was that the establishment were out to get him and that they'd all conspired to do him down, all of the front pages seem to take one view. So that's probably going to feed his feelings even more, I think.
Indeed. And Dorothy, this another quote from this friend is that it's not that the King won't speak to him, it's that he can't. How can you have a private and delicate conversation when you know it's going to end up on a news special within hours?
Which is probably fair comment. And quite a lot of the coverage today is telling us what's pretty obvious, that their relationship is very bad and has broken down. And I rather admire the British press for managing to make so much of this story and cheer us all up a bit at a very bad time. I mean, there's massive coverage of Prince Harry, but they're not really telling us that much, actually.
It hasn't advanced the story,
no,
has it? Really?
Not at all.
But how is it cheering us up, though?
Well, everybody
because it's not Gaza, Ukraine, tariffs, you know, all those horrible things. You know, to have as your headline, Harry, now the backlash grows, that's not really a big new major story, but it's quite good fun reading it. And I would congratulate the Mail as well for managing to get a little dig in at the BBC too, for the fact that the interview failed to challenge him enough. But considering what's going on in the world, there is an awful lot of coverage of this story in the papers tomorrow.
Yeah, I see what you mean by sort of turning the narrative away from all of the doom and gloom that we've had thus far. But it's still essentially quite a sad story, though, isn't it? Because it's the breakdown of a family.
Yeah, absolutely right. And while there's a sort of prurient sense of looking over the garden wall at another family's breakup, It is very sad because whatever happens, that on one level, Harry is saying, he would like to be reconciled, but the king isn't getting any younger, he's suffering from cancer, and he hasn't seen his grandchildren for a while. So there's no question that it's sad for the family, but for the rest of the watching public, perhaps it's less sad than many of the other stories that are around.
And Dorothy, we read that Prince Harry is still going to pursue a case regarding his security. He wants to write to Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary,
yes,
to question how this decision has been arrived at.
And he wants, he's asking her to urgently examine it, as if this is one of the most important matters of state happening in the country today. But I do sympathise with both of them as well. Although I think there is too much coverage of royal stories in the UK press, you cannot help but feel sorry for them and wish they could just get on better with each other.
John, do you think that the public has any sympathy for Harry at this stage, or do they think that he's coming across as rather entitled? According
to the Mail on Sunday, no. They say that 2/3 of people in Britain think that the Sussexes should be stripped of their HRH title. Well, actually, I thought in all effect they've already been stripped of their title because they're not entitled to use them.
But I'm afraid she used it very recently.
Right.
So perhaps there is a point there to saying if they were actually stripped of it, they could never use it.
But to answer your question, I think the Brits have decided who they're siding with, and they're siding with the King.
And from what we read, the King is quite exasperated, if we believe the quotes from the so-called friends. No names are mentioned in the articles. Let's move to the Observer. And lovely photo, summer photo out. The headline, Blooming Reform. And they're suggesting it's the women what won it for them.
Well, the Observer is the world's oldest continually published Sunday newspaper. And there's not a lot of news on the front page of the Observer, would be my observation. It's the second week of the New Look Observer under its new management of Tortoise and the James Harding, the former editor of The Times, the director of news for the BBC. It's obviously designed to be a longer read, I suspect, over the course of the week, rather than just demolishing it on Sunday. But it's a news magazine as opposed to a newspaper, I think, judging by its front page today.
And I'm not sure why I would pay £4.50, or no, £4.20 to read any of these stories. Nigel Slater's Kitchen Diary, that's nice. Florence Pugh is a marvel. Oswald Boateng's Dresses. Esther Freud swims in Hampstead Ponds. I mean, it reads almost like a local paper. The one thing I would say is that normally our newspapers in this country have pictures of incredibly glamorous women on the front and often semi-naked women on the front. And I rather like the fact that this is an enormous picture of perfectly normal-looking women who you might meet sitting on the top of the bus on your way to Archway. And it's a brave decision to think that they will lure lots of readers into paying £4.20.
There is a serious point behind it, though, actually, which is the demographics of where Reform's votes came from on Thursday, and making the point that actually the women who were voting on Thursday broke disproportionately for Reform as opposed to the men. So that's quite interesting. Actually.
Yes, because they were criticised for not appealing to women at all, weren't they? So the fact that they're suggesting their success is because of women is... it's taken the news story in a different direction.
And the criticism has been of Nigel Farage that he's down the pub, blokey, some pint of beer or likes a glass of claret, but whichever. It's sort of the blokey impression of UKIP, and that seems to have... certainly been put to bed by the figures on Thursday.
Sticking with Reform UK, taking us to the Sunday Times, and interesting lines from their party chairman, Zia Youssef, who's sketching out, the first 100 days of power. They'll be more transformational even than Margaret Thatcher, but he has ruled out a pact with the Conservative Party.
Well, I think some of these points are very interesting. I'm not quite sure what it means to remoralise young people and how you do that, but that's interesting. And the normal attack on being woke, and they're going to erect statues of great British figures across the country. So maybe we should all be sending our ideas along. I can't help but feel that that will be rather an expensive thing to do. But it's giving a flavour of how they are trying to come up with very appealing different sorts of policies at a time when Labour and the Conservatives don't seem to be saying new things to people which voters are finding appealing.
Buried away in the story here is another interesting line. We've just talked about how women broke disproportionately for reform, and the Sunday Times reports that Keir Starmer could use a reshuffle to fire Lisa Nandy. Well, that story was reported a few weeks ago, and all the time it seems that actually the people who are talked about in terms of reshuffles are female cabinet ministers, and you'd have to suspect there's a bit of a sort of whiff of misogyny around some of this, whether it's around who's doing the briefing or who's doing the reporting. And actually, you can see from the front page of The Observer that actually the women sort of, have got views and they broke for reform, and that's not going to lure them back, I don't think.
Yes.
Who are you accusing of misogyny? The Labour Party, so Keir Starmer? Or...
Well, it's never men who are briefed about in terms of reshuffles. It's always, Lisa Nandy?
It's always women, and it's often Lisa Nandy. But, I mean, it's not just true of the Labour Party now.
No.
It's true generally that women get briefed against much more than men. And it's actually not very appealing for women voters to see this constant attack on women.
Interesting. John and Dorothy, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up, Trump's tariff czar accuses Britain of being a servant to China. We'll discuss that and all the other headlines after the break.
Paris reverberated to the sights, sounds and smells of conflict. There's a focal point to all this anger, and that is Emmanuel Macron. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. There are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by dozens of French police officers on the beach. I've reported on migration across Europe, close up on the ground, understanding that sense of desperation and meeting the criminal gangs behind it. This old fishing boat set off from the Libyan port of Tobruk. There were 606 people who were on board. So we've been distributing life jackets to all the people on board this boat, and now the first person is coming on board. This is the ugly side of Italian football.
In Italy, everything is really organized.
Football's problems with hooliganism, racism were just dormant, and now they're back and they're getting worse. We cover so many countries, languages and cultures and work hard to gain trust to bring you the full story first. Help is slowly reaching these places. It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble and dust. This is a picture of destruction. Everywhere you look in this mountaintop community, there is absolute devastation. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
The Premier League run-in is live on NBC and streaming on Peacock, with crucial fixtures in the race for Europe. Saturday, Arsenal look to finish strong against Bournemouth.
Expect the unexpected.
Sunday, exclusively on Peacock. Champions League hopefuls Chelsea take on the Premier League champions Liverpool. This is the Premier League run-in, live on NBC and Peacock.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview, still with me, John Williams and Dorothy Byrne. Let us take a look at the Sunday Telegraph front page. And this accusation from the US economic advisor, Peter Navarro, that Britain is a servant of communist China, and goes on to sort of make several, not threats, but kind of warnings, I'd say, John.
Well, not even just a servant. He says, let's face it, the UK has been an all-too-compliant servant of the Chinese Communist Party because of the string-laden gifts that China gives as a way of spreading its soft power. Well, that's probably come as a bit of a surprise to many people. There was a reset not so long ago after the David Cameron years when China was out in the cold and we stopped them from taking part in the infrastructure for Britain's 5G telephone network. And while there's been a bit of a reset under Labour, I think to describe them as compliant servants of the Chinese Communist Party is certainly going some.
Well, it's pretty insulting. I mean, and Navarro is a highly influential advisor. He is, of course, the man who wrote a book, Death by China, so I think we know what he thinks of China. And he is clearly here trying to influence the UK and the EU in their dealings with China and is warning both of them because he wants them to put America first. Yeah. But it does seem extraordinary that another country is telling us how we should be doing our trade deals with a third country.
I mean, a quote here, he says, if the Chinese vampire can't suck the American blood, it's going to suck the UK blood and the EU blood. This is a very dangerous time for the world economics.
That's a lot of blood for anybody, but we shall see. I suspect he doesn't shop at Alibaba or get any of his stuff from China. We'll see.
Yeah, it's not his favourite website, I hear. To the Sunday Telegraphs again, also on the front page, and this is the news that the BBC's to appoint an independent figure to investigate its Arabic channel. This is over repeated allegations of anti-Semitism exposed by the Telegraph, they claim.
So it's quite an interesting story, this, because actually Samir Shah, the chair of the BBC, announced there was going to be an independent inquiry into the corporation's coverage when he appeared before the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee back in March. So on one level, this isn't new, but it's World Press Freedom Day, and so it's welcome that it's on the front page. But it is just worth reflecting, I think, that 176 journalists have been killed since October the 8th in 2023. And all of the 124 journalists who were killed last year around the world, 70% of them were in Gaza. And that's, however the BBC is accused of reporting it, those figures in themselves, on this day in particular, bear repeating, I think.
Yeah, I think it would really shock people to realise that this is the highest ever number of journalists recorded as having been killed, and it's more journalists than were killed in the Second World War, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, the war in Afghanistan,
Iraq,
Yep. all put together, and strong evidence that a number of them, it was targeted killings. So I think on World Press Freedom Day, that is the story about journalists in Gaza that we should really be thinking about. And yet another attack on BBC coverage is not the priority for us all to be thinking about.
That is an astounding figure, those stats that you quote, and people perhaps just don't realise just the danger that journalists are in to bring the story.
Well, let's remember that it has been the Palestinian journalists in Gaza who have been the world's eyes and ears, because actually, people like Alex Crawford and others haven't been able to get into Gaza, so we have been wholly reliant on them, and it's only because of their courage and their dedication over the last 18 months that we've actually known what's going on.
John and Dorothy, thank you so much. See you in the 11 o'clock hour. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, an update on our breaking news story regarding the arrest of 14 children over the death of a boy in a fire.